Hi everyone, Gary Cassidy here, and I'm joined by a former NXT UK champion, former NXT Tag champion. He's just won the Heritage Cup, so great timing. It's Tyler Bate. How's it going today, Tyler?
Um, I feel great. It's a very gloomy day here in Dudley, but it's not enough to keep a smile from my face.
Exactly, and the reason for that, firstly, I need to congratulate you because, not just the prize. Obviously, that is the main thing, is you've come away with silverware, but another incredible match. It seems like you're just making that a habit. Firstly, I want to ask, how natural is that? You seem like a very laid back guy. Do you just go out there, have a match, and then it turns out to be a classic? Or do you feel like there's like pressure on your shoulders every time to deliver another match that lives up to the last one?
Well, both actually. It's both the pressure and the play. So I like to think of wrestling as I've said a bunch of times before, but wrestling is the same as any other art form, like music, for example. And I like to think of pro wrestling, at least the way that I approach it, as like jazz. So when I watch jazz musicians playing together, they, it is a jazz musician has perfected his craft or her craft enough that they are able to leave forms almost. They're so good that they leave concepts, forms to leave forms, and that's how I think of, or at least how I approach pro wrestling, is that I use structure and form to leave form so that it becomes more of a purer play, almost just playtime. I'm dancing, I'm playing music. There's like a push and pull that happens with whoever I'm in the ring with, and especially with someone like A-Kid, who's so good as well. It's very, it just makes that very fun, this like feedback, because he's pushing at me, and then whilst he's pushing at me, he's creating opportunities for me to push back, and then it becomes this almost like music, like this dance type. Don't know. I don't know why I'm doing this. That's how it feels in my head, is this motion. But yeah, it is like I feel like I've just trained enough now that when I go out there, I have the absolute most faith in my abilities as a professional wrestler to just do. I just trust myself enough that I can relax and that I can, just. So here's a good saying. We never rise to the level of our hopes. We always fall to the level of our training. So
that's very, very nicely put. I will say, I love the jazz analogy because I heard that you'd taken up piano over the past year. I do hope you're not as good at that as wrestling, because we don't want you moving away from the wrestling industry to focus on a piano playing career.
I'll do both.
Yeah, exactly. Well, if anyone can, I'm sure you can balance it. So I normally leave like the kind of quick fire questions to the end, but I want to ask one just now because it feels fitting. I just mentioned the standard of matches. If for some reason someone out there hadn't seen any Tyler Bate matches and you can only tell them to watch one of your matches, what one are you telling them to watch?
Ooh, it's a really tough one. It depends on the person, because I guess the Pete Dunne Chicago takeover one is just always going to be. It feels like that one is timeless. It will never go out of date. So I feel like in any time period, if anybody asked me that question, that's a match that I feel could hold up. But I also feel the same about the Walter Cardiff takeover match.
Yeah.
I feel like that for me was almost at the time like an open magnus. Is that the right term?
Yeah, I think magnum opus.
Magnum opus. That's the term I was looking for. Yeah. Because as far as I feel like in my matches, I try not to do give people like fireworks and tricks to just like clickbait people into watching it. I try and make them, I guess, like you said, like timeless classics. Because for me, what is true to wrestling is the wrestling part. So for me, my matches are always about the wrestling, because it's the one constant that remains true to wrestling through all time.
Yeah, it's like that substance. But I feel like you could have named any match and I'd have probably been sitting here nodding away going, I can't argue with that. So I'm going to come back to the Heritage Cup at the end, but I want to ask, first of all, for a start, if anybody hasn't watched ever since you started, they should have been. But if someone had just seen the first Tyler Bate, or the first night or 2 nights in WWE, and then seen you now, the difference is night and day. I mean, obviously you were an incredible performer back then as well, but you've definitely grown. You look a lot different, as someone does in 5 years. I want to ask about your role, from then to now, because you're 24 years old. You're still very young, but you've been in the company or been in NXT UK since the start. Triple H called you one of the pillars of the brand, which must be great. But I want to ask, with a lot of new names coming in, to the company over the past year, do you see yourself as like a veteran of the locker room now? Are people coming to you for advice, or are you still like, oh no, I'm one of the youngest guys here, so I need to just always be learning?
Again, both. I guess I have been here longer than a lot of other people in NXT UK, so it only feels reasonable that people would come to me for advice. I've wrestled throughout many different levels in the company, so I can give good personal experience. But again, like you said, I am also still very young, and I like to keep in mind being open to everything but attached to nothing. So like water flows, I'm always trying and adapt and become. It's this constant becoming for me. It's so although people might think of me as a veteran, look, most people in NXT UK have actually been wrestling for longer than me. They've been in the UK indie scene for like 5, 6, 7 plus years longer than. But we have like 15, 20-year veterans in NXT UK. But so yeah, as far as being a WWE superstar goes, I think I'm quite a reliable source for advice, because I feel like I've proved my point in my performances enough to show that I think I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's going to argue with that one. But, the reason I kind of mentioned there also, not just growth as a performer, but your appearance has changed. And obviously, when you started, it was just the mustache and very character-based. Now it feels like we're seeing more Tyler Bate. It feels like we're seeing you as the person. One thing that I think, looking back over the past few years, when you see someone that's a character that portrays, a vegan, for instance, or someone who's in touch with nature in any way, they seem to be the villain. They seem to be the heel. I want to ask, is there any hesitance for you to, try and portray that as a face? Because for some reason, vegans and people that care about the planet are always portrayed as villains in wrestling.
So I have many thoughts about this. So when it comes to playing a character in wrestling, going back to like the drastic changes in my appearance and the way I behaved from when I began at the original UK tournament to now, that all that was just, you know, I was 19 when I came in, and there is still just in real life a lot of growing up that happens up until about the age of 25, really. Like that post puberty, still maturing, you know, becoming, like, coming into whoever you are, really. That's all that really was still me just growing up, basically. And I feel like, as far as wrestling goes, there was a lot of me throwing stuff at the wall to just see what sticks, see what people liked, you know, what are people going to gravitate to. That's all that really was. And I eventually came to the realization, because in my mind I was always thinking, you know, how am I going to stand out? How am I going to be different? How am I going to one up everybody else? And I came to the conclusion that what makes me different, what gives me my identity different from everybody else, is that I am me. Nobody in the world, no matter how hard they try, can do me. And that is my superpower. So I simplified things for myself. So in wrestling, there is no difference between me, the character, and me in real life. I just am all the time. I'm just Tyler Bate, in the ring, out the ring. It just made things a lot easier for myself. And that is why I don't hesitate when it comes to being vegan, being, you know, I guess like someone who's passionate about the environment, stuff like that, because that is just what I believe, that just is how I am in everyday life. I don't have to, I'm not doing it to try to convince anybody of a character. And people can see that. People know when they're trying to be sold something, or whether they're getting what is true. And I feel like that's why, that's just why people, that's why it works for me, is because it is true. I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything. I just am.
Yeah, it'd be worse if people were not gravitating towards you when you're just being you. Then you know you might be doing something wrong otherwise. So I want to switch up a little bit, because last year there were some rumours that you'd be following Pete Dunne across the pond to NXT. Obviously, you winning, you know, silverware in NXT UK might have extinguished that fire ever so slightly. I want to ask, how close was that to happening? Was it something that was almost a reality?
It's been something that's like been floating around in my mind, is like, if and when might I want to go to the States. But for me, my goals in wrestling are very simple, and it's just to enjoy it and to do it my way, really. And I get both of those things in NXT UK. So I'm in no rush to go to NXT or go to main roster or anything. So for me, as far as I'm concerned, I've peaked. There is no progression to the States. I'm already winning. So for me, it's just, if and when I go to the States, it's if I feel that my work in NXT UK is finished. But I feel like there's still a lot of fun to be had here, which is what keeps me here.
Well, sure,
I love the crew as well. You know, the NXT UK crew. It's the UK indie guys that I came up in wrestling with. I have deep relationships with some of the people on the roster. So that's something that, you know, I really appreciate about NXT UK.
Definitely, and that's there's definitely still something to be done, because you're the closest person to being a Triple Crown champion, the first one in NXT UK history. Exactly. So there's still one thing left to be done at least. One thing that you mentioned there was, you know, the crew. I want to ask you about production, because I recently spoke to Shawn Michaels, and he had mentioned, you know, asked about Pete Dunne being a producer in NXT UK before he moved across the pond. He said Walter was doing a bit of production as well. I want to ask a wee bit of a two-parter. Have you know, done any work with them in terms of you producing yourself, Or is there any wrestler that you've worked with as a producer that you've went, man, they've got a future in that side of the business?
No, I haven't. I haven't done any producing or anything. It's something that I'm happy to try. I'm definitely open to giving a go. But yeah, I don't know. It's not really something that I have many thoughts about, really. Walter seems to be doing a great job at it. We already have James Mason and Johnny Moss, who both do a great job at it as well. And, you know, they don't need me. So, you know, until they need me, then things are just... It's just
a very humble answer there.
yeah, you know, yeah. I just don't really have many thoughts about it.
Yeah, so I've got a couple of quick ones to end on, if that's okay. I mentioned Shawn Michaels there. You know, obviously an absolute legend. When I asked Trent Seven this question, he gave me the answer that he'd drunkenly met Ric Flair in a hotel room and that he'd spoke to The Undertaker about Japanese wrestling. So no pressure. What's the most surreal experience you've had or interaction with a legend of WWE?
I don't think I have any. Look, I definitely don't have any stories that top Ben's. I don't know. I feel like. Yeah, well, any answer that I give will be underwhelming. It won't be, you know. I've only ever had very civil interactions with WWE legends. No crazy stories. Yeah.
He did set the bar a little bit too high, I think, for anyone to ask that question to going forward. So my final question, you know, we mentioned it earlier that you're kind of somewhere in between being, you know, still learning, but being a veteran, being someone that's been in NXT UK through, you know, from the start. One of my favourite things about NXT UK right now is it seems like, you know, the fresh start has been very fresh. You were seeing so many people that either they were there and just not, you know, at the top of the card, like Pretty Deadly, who have taken the ball, ran with it. We're seeing people like Aoife Valkyrie. We're seeing, you know, Rampage has just came in. In terms of people that we might not be seeing much of on TV, I know you called out Jack Stars yesterday, so I guess he might be one of the names. But in terms of people that are, you know, working a lot behind the scenes, doing a lot in the gym, asking for advice, who should we be looking out for that we're not quite seeing breaking through on TV yet, but we will be in the future?
Kenny Williams. I'll say Kenny Williams. I think he's outstanding. There are exciting things to come for him. Who else? I don't know. I'm struggling to think off the top of my head. I guess like Kenny Williams. I feel like Saxon Huxley. There's a lot of potential there that hasn't quite been showcased. Yeah, I'm struggling. Jack Stars again.
Well, I'm not going to argue with you with Kenny Williams because obviously we've got similar backgrounds in terms of where we're from, and you're not the first person to say Saxon Huxley, so so that's definitely great to hear. Thank you so much for taking the time. I can't wait to see what you do with the Heritage Cup and hopefully get a wee rematch with A-Kid as well, because I wouldn't mind seeing that again. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.